It hides in plain sight. Epstein was hiding in plain sight. We all knew about him. We all knew what he was doing. But we had no one that was, legal aspect that would go after him. They were afraid of him. For whatever reason, they were afraid of him.
And since we're in the business of issuing subpoenas now, here are a few more that I've filed. A subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate to provide the flight logs for his private plane, given the numerous allegations of human trafficking and sexual abuse surrounding Mr. Epstein. I think it is very important that we identify everybody that was on that plane and how many trips they took on that plane and the destinations to which they arrived.
Yesterday, we told you how the number 2 Senate Dem, Dick Durbin, blocked a vote to subpoena Epstein's flight logs. Durbin claimed he wasn't blocking the subpoena, they just ran out of time. Well, the Senate was back today, and they didn't vote on the subpoena. We asked his office why, and they said, again, the timing. But Dick wasn't even ready to hold a vote. He was in Chicago, cutting a ribbon at a battery plant.
Chairman Durbin, can I ask you a quick question? Why won't you subpoena Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs?
So who are you?
Hillary Vaughn with Fox.
With Fox, of course. I don't know anything about his flight logs.
But why won't you subpoena them? Why don't you want to know?
I don't know the issue. I know who Epstein was, but I certainly don't know anything about the issue.
Well, he was charged with sex trafficking, so why don't you want to know who was utilizing his private plane?
Never been raised by anyone.
Well, Senator Blackburn has wanted to subpoena them, and there hasn't been a vote in your committee.
Said a word to me, not a word.
But aren't you curious, like, what high-profile or powerful people might be closeted predators and pedophiles? Doesn't that concern you?
Of course.
So why won't you subpoena them if you can?
It's the first time anyone has raised it. Thank you, Fox.
So are you curious about it? Will you do it?
Durbin's a liar. Last week, Primetime asked his office why he was blocking votes to subpoena Epstein's flight logs, and they said there wasn't enough time. And then at today's hearing, Durbin complained that Fox was asking him to investigate sex trafficking. Poor little Dick. Durbin.
Senator Blackburn, before you leave, I want to make a point for the record, since I understand you made some statements about the Jeffrey Epstein flight logs. There's a Fox reporter in the hallway who asked me about this, and I said I had not spoken to you one time about this issue. I think you'll back me up on that. I'm not mistaken. I didn't know that this was even a subject of your amendments, which, if you'll recall, you were the first on the list until the 2-hour rule was invoked. I don't know anything about this request on your part. I'll be happy to discuss it with you. But I haven't done any discussion with you to this point, correct?
Mr. Chairman, I know, and I think you're fully aware that I had 2 amendments, one dealing with Epstein and Sotomayor. I brought it up previously.
I have to confess I didn't know that you'd offer that amendment. Happy to discuss it with you, but I want to point on the record. You and I have never personally discussed this, have we?
We talked briefly on the floor at the conclusion.
You never mentioned what the subject matter of your amendment was. You said you wanted to offer your
amendment. In committee, I brought up the subject matter of my amendments.
Not in my presence.
Not only was the subject matter brought up in Durbin's presence, Senator Blackburn was speaking directly to him.
I seek recognition.
Senator Blackburn.
Since we're in the business of issuing subpoenas now, here are a few more that I've filed. A subpoena to Jeffrey Epstein's estate to provide the flight logs for his private plane.
Thank you, Senator. When I recognized you, I didn't know what subject you wished to speak to. As I announced at the beginning, the first thing we'll consider the 2 judicial nominations, then we will move to the subpoena.
All right, so we caught him lying. First, there wasn't enough time. Then this was the first time he was hearing about it. Then it was never brought up in his presence. Why is Dick playing dumb?
In looking at some of the survivors from the Epstein issues, there are disturbing allegations that the FBI failed to investigate the sex trafficking allegations. And indeed, one survivor says that the FBI, even after she brought forward repeatedly content about his conduct, that the FBI refused to investigate her claims, even though she said the allegations were there on both the sex trafficking and the child sexual abuse material. And I want to know why or what awareness you have of the FBI's failure to investigate these claims. And I want to get you on the record, since numerous survivors have said the FBI did not show up to help them. What specifically has the FBI done to investigate the claims that Epstein's and others participated in, produced, possessed, and distributed CSAM?
Well, first, let me say I recall very well that you have a very specific and longstanding interest, not just in child sexual exploitation, but in human trafficking as a cousin of that. And we appreciate your focus on it and your support of the importance of that part of our mission. As to the Epstein case specifically, I will tell you it's been a while since I looked at that case. Obviously, we worked together with prosecutors to bring charges before he...
I realize that.
Yeah.
But what we need from you is a complete investigation of why the FBI did not take this up, and then getting to the bottom of what is appearing to be an enormous sex trafficking ring and listening to these survivors. You know, and as I said, I've tried to get a subpoena on the flight logs, which I think is important to this. I think people need to know who was on those planes and how often they were on those planes. I think people who invest in companies would want to know if there are people from their C-suite. And as we go through this, should those logs be made public? They've been heavily redacted.
Well, as I said, it's been a while since I looked at the specific case. I can tell you that we've been increasing year over year, both the number of agents focused on these kinds of cases, the number of victims we've rescued, and so on to the specific case. Let me offer to have let me get with my team and figure out if there's more information we can provide to you.
That would be great. Yeah. We have never, even through the Ghislaine Maxwell trial, we never got to the bottom of this, and we have these survivors who say, oh, there is so much more. They swept it under the rug, and that is wrong, and you need to right that wrong.
Now, Epstein had dirt on a lot of powerful people. He had friends in high places and knew secrets that kept everybody in line. And he's been dead for 4 years, but for some reason the government keeps blocking the client list. You weren't ever on Jeffrey Epstein's jet, were you?
I was on Jeffrey Epstein's jet 2 times. I was on it in 1993, and I was on it and I went to Florida with my wife and 2 children to visit my mom over Easter. My wife had some kind of relationship with Ghislaine Maxwell, and they offered us a ride to Palm Beach. So I went then, and then on another occasion, I flew again with my family, with I think 4 of my children, and Mary, my wife, to Rapid City, South Dakota, to go fossil hunting for a weekend, but otherwise I was never on his jet alone. I've been very open about this from the beginning. This was in '93, so it was 30 years ago. It was before anybody knew about Jeffrey Epstein's, his nefarious issues. And I agree with you that all of this information should be released. And we should get real answers on what happened to Jeffrey Epstein and any of the high-level political people that he was involved with. All of that should be open to the public. It should be absolutely transparent. And, I don't see why any of those records would have any redactions in them. Why would we be hiding that from the American public?